My answer is like, it does take time. That
Yeah.
segment is a piece of the process,
Right.
right? Like you thinking it takes this much time, but actually it takes that much time. That is the process.
Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Grind with Rich Brubaker and
Ryan Tam, what up, everybody? It's good to be
All
back.
right. So, how are things over there in Europe?
Well, I don't think there's a civil war out here so far. Yeah, I mean, Lisbon is still so fantastic. We took a hike yesterday, and it's amazing how close we are to nature relative to Shanghai. I mean, nature in Shanghai was like going to Jing'an Park and,
Right.
breathing in highway fumes as you did so, right?
Sound of car horns instead of birds. Yes.
So, I'm loving this kind of awkward time that we have here and trying to make the most of it. Like we just said, the internet's super fast, stupid things like that. Here's how I described it. All right. And I don't know if this is relevant or not, but like there are so many nice things that you lose track and you can't even count it all. And then you kind of go like, it's overwhelming how many things that you can appreciate, like good conversation, good food, people saying hello to you and smiling, like random strangers on the street. It is being in Shanghai for 12 years and not having that and getting accustomed to not having it. When that happens to me here, I go like, what do you want? What are you trying to sell me? Yeah. So jaded, man. And I don't like that, but it's the truth. Yeah. So it's just making me appreciate and also reflect on the differences.
Well, it's interesting here in New York. It's kind of, it's the same as Shanghai, honestly. Although I'd say Shanghai, when I first got there, it was an amazing community of kind of these global people. I mean, that could be the expat, that could be the entrepreneur. And you kind of you all knew each other because, there were so few places to go. You were constantly bumping into each other. Over time, obviously, things changed. And I knew a lot less people in town with more time. So, but yeah, I think appreciating those things, you're like, wow, nature in New York. I mean, it's not great, but a 15-minute walk,
not bad.
A half an hour drive, we went out to these gardens yesterday. I mean, it was just phenomenal. So yeah, you start to notice these little things. Decent coffee. Okay, this is Dunkin' Donuts. It's not decent coffee, but this will tell you.
I think we just lost 100 subscribers. That was it.
You appreciate decent coffee when you haven't had it for a while, right? How's the Rebuild series going?
It's been a lot of fun. And just taking a step back, what the Rebuild series was all about was this kind of pet project that I decided to embark on. Obviously, the pandemic is a very strange time. And I was very curious to see how other people would react to it. I have my own take on it, but I find my own take very boring. And so I wanted to bring in 5 of my friends to share their experiences. Shot 4 episodes, basically an hour-long interview with each one, sliced up into one macro episode.
Right.
And that's been a lot of fun just doing that, going through the whole creative process.
How did you come up with this idea to begin with? Like, what was the starting point? Because for me, I've seen most of the episodes so far. It's like the concept for me was like, wow, it was really like, it hits me as a viewer. But how'd you come up with it? And like, what was the genesis?
It was, I think I was taught, it just slowly bubbles up. And I was talking to other people and they were saying like, why don't you create this kind of interview show? You have it in you. And I'm like, yeah, but what would I do it on? And this was March, April. And the biggest topic and the most pressing topic was COVID. And for me, what I care most about as entrepreneurs, it's a very simple intersection of those two interests. I was thinking about it, like, why was it so important to do that show or do the show? And it's the genesis of it was that I believe that entrepreneurs have lived through chaos and uncertainty before. And so I was curious to see how would that experience play out in something of the times, right? And it's something that we always talk about, like as we're preparing for the show, like how do we make our conversations more relevant to to 2020 October, 2020 November, right? Like really specific. And so that this is kind of all these thoughts swirling together.
Yeah.
And
so how did you identify these 5? Like, why these 5 people? Why, like, when you're going through this, what was it about their experience or conversations, or it was just you knew them the best that you thought served up the best stories?
I knew all of them for several years. Yao, I knew the least, but she was always very bubbly and friendly and positive. And I've had one conversation with her, but we were always chasing each other. Like, hey, we should get coffee. You know, one of these kind of casual acquaintances.
But they were all in Shanghai to begin with, correct? Or that's where you knew them from?
Yeah. Over the past couple of years, we all met in Shanghai. And so, Yao in particular, I knew she was this friendly person. And I thought, okay, you know, we always wanted to get coffee, but I didn't know her. So let me throw her in there. Maybe, you know, she has entrepreneurship experience. It's interesting to hear what she might say. And I knew that she was, you know, about to close her business. And I thought that would be a very interesting perspective to bring into the conversation. Ro is this crazy Irish young entrepreneur. They're all relatively young. And he has this menswear startup. And it's this traditional industry, but he's using technology to disrupt it. And so I wanted to bring in some sort of like technology, scalable startup that's kind of cool and sexy in that way. And his hunger and ambition is off the charts, and I love him for that. And he's a close friend, so that was
he has a ton of energy on the camera.
I can't. When I edit on double X speed, right? And for him, I have to slow it down because he just talks so fast with an Irish accent, which I love. And I'm just like, what? It's a lot of fun. Joe, I've known for 7-8 years as well, and he does education in Shanghai, like kind of daycare education.
Right.
And again, he's super positive, but I know he's been through his fair share of challenges. And then I chose these people because I wanted a mix of experience, personality, and male and female, a global perspective too. Obviously, each one of these people come from different countries. And that's what I was really looking for. I was thinking of a global audience. I was thinking of, you know, if we entrepreneurs in China were the leading edge and our businesses were hit first, then I wanted to share our learnings and experiences and mistakes so that the rest of the world could gain something from that. So I wanted somebody who could appeal to that audience. And so that's kind of how I went through and thought about it.
But I think actually when you started that, it was very timely because China, and I guess a little bit more broadly than Asia, was absolutely at the leading curve of this. You know, the US was starting to slow down, but it wasn't. And Europe, you know, I think in Italy for sure got hit early. But, you know, if you were looking at like a region, it was like Asia, because every economy had shut down. Every city had put in some kind of restrictions at that point. And everyone, well, I mean, even in Hong Kong, they've been screaming for a year about how bad business was. So, you know, if you're going to try and recover, these are the people who are way ahead using GPS or a tea leaf, you know, trying to figure it out, right? So, I mean, all right, you got the entrepreneurs, you have the basic idea, but how did you then approach it from there? Like, okay, I want to talk to this person about that. Like, was there a lot of conversations, or did you do it like how we do it? Like, so what are we talking about today? Okay, hit record. Like, how did you approach it that way?
Truth kind of hurts, huh?
I won't say we're winging it here, but we're winging it here, you know?
I mean, we had a couple WeChat or WhatsApp exchanges to plan for this. So in my case, I knew I wanted to make it a little bit more of a polished show. And I knew I wanted to bring all the voices together somehow. And I didn't know the effect that I would achieve with that. And I think if you watch the show eventually, what you'll notice is that the entrepreneurs are having one conversation, even though they're all talking to me one-on-one. And so what I'm doing is I'm slicing all of our conversations and I'm weaving it all together into a single conversation. So much so that they're completing each other's sentences and each other's thoughts. And I didn't know how that effect would happen. It was kind of accidental.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe it would be very, very simple chunks. Like I would ask this general question. I just list like 5 minutes per person.
Right.
But then as I watched that initial draft, I was like, this is just way too boring. So that's on a creative kind of technical side. But on like in preparation, I did have, I think 6 to 9 questions that I sent to each person, same questions. And I gave them a week to prepare. And we scheduled the time with each other, and then we recorded it. And then like 2 weeks later, after I had everyone's conversations, I then edited it all together in the way that I just mentioned. Sorry, it's kind of flipped, but yeah.
And then are you doing ongoing conversations, ongoing follow-ups, so you can keep that arc of the story going, or how's that progressing?
It's very odd. It would. So the answer is no.
Okay.
I had those 5 questions. I had those 6 questions, and then I had very, very roughly sketched out a 5-episode story arc. For whatever reason, I don't know why I did 5, but I decided to do 5. And so we're kind of towards the end of it right now. I hoped that at the end of the 5 episodes, 5 months, 6 months, that we would have some sort of conclusion. But knowing kind of like this is reality TV, this is a documentary.
There's no conclusion yet,
right? It's not going to be as satisfying. So I'm trying to work through that. I think in some ways the story comes out very naturally. I'm very lucky that each of these people are very charismatic and they tell fantastic stories. And I think what happens by doing it one-on-one, you create a very personal conversation, and they are very open in that way. And so I think I got lucky, and they're just fantastic. And I wanted to choose thoughtful people, and that was another kind of criteria: thoughtful, positive people going through the entrepreneurial experience. Like, if you start with good stuff, you only get lucky, right?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps along the way, right? So when you're talking to them, I mean, they're from, all of them are from different countries. All of them are from different, even like products and backgrounds.
Yep.
Did they all leave? Did they all stay in Shanghai? Like, did some fight? Did some go down with the ship? Like, and did it matter that you stayed or left? Did you find, like, what were some things that like maybe helped them or hurt them as they're making their way through this?
So if you include me, there's 6 people. 3 of us had already left China, and they're also somehow going across different parts of the world too. Because of the pandemic and visa restrictions, travel was very, very hazardous and kind of haphazard too. So, no one's kind of where they were originally, and that's been kind of a funny story arc in itself. And I think one thing that we've learned is that we had to make it work virtually. It became very obvious very early on that there was no way around that. I think another big one was this idea of experimentation. And each of them started to try to do different things. And I think Hannah's story is really a great example of that, because he was working in a corporate job, 9 years in Shanghai or something like that, communications work. And then he had heard about doing like blogging as a business. So he wanted to explore that. And he took this course, and then he started to learn more about that. But midway through or maybe a month into his independence as a blogger, he lost a job, became a blogger, realized he doesn't like writing.
Oh God.
and he was, kind of like stuck. Like, what should I do next? And he had to go out and explore other things. And we tracked that in the story month by month. You can see something that was just, he mentioned it as this thing in passing in an early episode, suddenly blossomed into kind of the core business that he's working on right now. And who knows where that's going to lead in the next episode. So I think that's an example of how experimentation was really, really key.
COVID presented really an excuse to try everything, right? And one of those things is the fact that leaders, founders, managers have always said, I have to be in the room with my team for it to work, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, everyone has the excuse now to be wherever you want, and you have to relearn those structures. Do you think that the entrepreneurs you're talking with maybe adapted? Did they adapt well to that? Did it actually suit them because they're already thinking about how to do this? And it's like giving the excuse, or was it maybe something you realized, or maybe they realized they really need to be in person to rebuild their business or to move their ideas forward at speed and scale?
So I think in some ways yes, in some ways no. I think because they're entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
they're not as like settled in their systems and structures,
Right,
and their businesses are all relatively young. I think Joe's business was the hardest hit. He's an offline education business with like
right,
9 centers all around China. That was hit hard.
yep,
Education shut down, right?
right, right,
Offline
right,
shut down. Kids very very careful, right? Parents are very careful.
yeah,
So he really struggled to find a way back, and then he was thrown. He had to go back to Canada and manage remotely, 12 with a 12-hour time difference. So uh, that
tough,
I think he had the toughest time
yeah.
uh, in regards to that.
So
But
it's kind of like
everyone
the lesson is
else,
you can do it, but it's really tough.
yeah. I mean, if he wasn't as creative and positive and persistent as tough as he is, I don't think it would have been possible. Others, they were they were just open-minded to it, so they just went with it, right? I think in the middle part of the series, a lot of us are complaining about how difficult it is and how
Mm,
much we are struggling to accept this new reality. And
sure.
so I shouldn't say like, yeah, we're so young and creative and entrepreneurial, like we can do
Rah, rah,
whatever.
rah.
No, if you watch episode 3, we're like crying about like, I can't go back. It's so difficult, right?
Right,
And
right.
so the struggle was real. I don't do a lot of um, work trying to make sense of
Mm,
what we've captured. I'm just trying to capture it right now,
yeah.
and I think one of the biggest things for this video series was just creating a sense of community for all the independent entrepreneurs out there.
Right,
Like,
right.
man, we are fucked. Our businesses are in so much trouble. Everything is different,
Yep.
and I'm alone. And then you watch this and you go like, oh, I'm not alone. They're also fucked. Their business is also in trouble. They're also struggling through the change, and they're coming up with these ideas. And yet they're also still somewhat positive and they're still working
Right,
through it.
right.
So, there's none of these episodes are kind of clear cut and say like, oh, we're finished. Like we've rebuilt.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
uh, I think that
It's a
that's,
process.
that's really, really key in that. Yeah, exactly. It's a very rebuilding process.
Now, a lot of people are talking about, jobs lost and the struggles, and you
Yeah.
just said like we're fucked, right? Did any of the entrepreneurs literally end up like on their parents' couch, out of money, totally, totally bombed out? And did that help them crystallize ideas or to move faster? Or did you see like they just got sucked into the black hole of the fetal position pity structures?
One in particular, Yao's case, I think her story was really, really inspirational in this case.
Mm.
She had run 2 businesses in Shanghai for 5 years and 5 years and had to shut down. Travel industry,
Oof.
um, that's super
Bye
tough.
bye.
And so she had to say goodbye to it. And
Mm.
eventually, after several months, and she has a team and everything, so she had to shut that down. Go back to Israel, stay with her family. Thank God, that's a possibility. And she
Yeah.
recognized how lucky she was and how fortunate and privileged she was, um, and how comfortable it was. And I think what happened was, going back to the idea of experiments,
Mm.
she reached out to a bunch of people. She's, like I said before, very friendly, very charismatic,
Yep.
and a lot of people were also reaching out to her because she had developed this global travel community. And so what I want to point out is that her by developing her assets early on, this investment in people for the past 10 years, she
Yeah.
was able to call on this investment later. And she went through, maybe I couldn't even keep track, 2 3 4 5 different projects
Mm.
where she was like trying different things to work with different people in various capacities.
Right.
And eventually she's working on a somewhat longer term project right now. So I think that's a great lesson,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Like, you may not have anything, but you always have what you kind of like your investments early on. Like if you're a
Right.
people person, that's something you can rely on.
Sure.
And then another one, Renata, she's in the middle of her kind of low period where she's reworking her business model and rethinking things. But even now, as I'm talking to her every day as friends, like, because actually all of these people are my friends,
Yeah.
we're finding out that she's exploring the business community in Russia, and like who knows where that's going to lead. And
Right.
there's a
Right.
lot of new opportunity there. And again, I think why is this important? And what is the common theme here? Is a sense of positivity and a sense of abundance, and always looking out for new opportunities. I think
Right.
that's a fundamental different with I hate to say regular people, but like people who are
Yeah.
working in jobs, regular jobs, let's call it
Right.
that way. Entrepreneurs, they don't have that safety net is much thinner, and there's a lot more holes in our safety net.
Sure. Sure.
So, you know, that, and if you can't look down, you got to look up, and they're
Yeah.
looking at all the opportunities out there. And so I think that's really, really cool. That,
Yeah, you know, so I was talking to a couple people that we know in Shanghai, and I mean, they've got really big businesses, 40, 50 more people, right? And they were telling me like in the first month, like they're like, I really have to save the business, right? Like, wow. And then now they're into like, you know, even better business than they were before,
yeah,
just 3 months later, because they realize like it's just all hands on deck. And you look
yeah,
for opportunities that are around you, and you're not
yeah,
necessarily so picky, choosy. Oh no, like no, you pay the bills, you pay your people, you keep moving forward. And then, you know, when you're on safer ground, you can figure out like what it is you can kind of like let go. So it's like the new Genesis, as it were, right? There's one thing about like this time that's a little bit different than normal. Like I've always tried to focus on developing the new idea, the new product, the new whatever, when I kind of had everything else settled down. I was like, you know what? I
mhm,
made my sales for the year. I've got my team. Like you made a big chunky piece, you know, it's solidified. And you're like, okay,
yeah,
now I can kind of leave it and go think. Now it's
uh-huh,
like you have to do both at the same time. Like you mentioned, actually, like someone was
right,
comfortable, right? Like when you're comfortable, actually, I think I'm not sure it's the best time to come up with the really new ideas, but I'm not
right,
sure like the poverty mindset, which I know we're going to cover as well in the future. It's like, you know, you come up with like the quickest idea that you can make a little bit of money off of, or that you can
mm,
try things. Um, I read an article this week on minimal likable product, not even viable, just likable, minimal likable product, and then you iterate through
okay,
that process. Now,
yeah, yeah,
I used to like to do that when I had a little bit of a cushion. Like I knew my sales were there,
yep,
my I had achieved a bunch of goals, and I was like, okay, if I stop now, I'm still happy here. So I'm going to go
hmm,
switch over here and try something new. But
hmm,
now I think that you need to be a little bit more proactive about how you move around.
yeah,
And even if this thing isn't full, like you're just like, boop, you know, you're like, okay, I know I need to be back in 30 seconds. Boop, you know, like it's not going to stay up there on its own, but I need to get it up there long enough that I can go try something else. And I think you
sure.
just need to
It's
move, you need to
juggling,
move through it
right?
faster.
Yeah, you're constantly in motion as you're juggling all these different projects.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting here is that, you know, for a lot of, I think, non-entrepreneurs or early entrepreneurs, they are afraid sometimes of starting the projects. And that, what I found is that the benefits of the projects might not be apparent in the upfront, but
Right.
as you do it, it starts to reveal itself.
Right.
And the synergies, word of the day, the synergies are actually they do take hold, and that's how you develop a business and a brand and a
Right.
machine, rather than just a single, like a business model, like you said, rather than
Yeah.
just a single revenue stream, which is, you know, as we see in COVID, very, very precarious. So,
So I think
yeah,
you actually bring up a really good point for definitely a future episode of Behind the Grind about like
yeah,
what holds you back. Because for me, it's not the fear. What I find is with some of those proposals I showed you, it's like, damn it, I built this 3 months ago. Why haven't I
yeah,
done anything?
yeah,
And that becomes the mindset. Like it, that guilt or that
yeah.
fear, that
You're,
feeling like
yeah,
you
yeah.
wasted time, like that becomes its own self-fulfilling, you know, kind of barrier to progress. And it's like,
Oh wow.
I'm sure that some people are fearful, like, oh, I'm not sure I want to send this out and get shot down. I'm sure like that there is that. And I know I felt that at some point when I'm like pitching a client. I'm not sure I got the fee right, whatever, right? I worked a process around that. But I was thinking like, why is it that I haven't gotten as far as I have in some other projects? I'm like, man, because I feel bad that I haven't made that much progress. It's like, it's weird, but sometimes I feel like that's actually a bigger inhibitor for me than it is feeling afraid of sending an email.
That's a big topic, man. You know, I had another friend just today who was messaging me about that. She's like a brand new entrepreneur, also a former professor, and she's also thinking about like trying to develop her new thing now. And she's like, why is it taking so much time? I'm struggling through this thing, you know?
Yeah.
And my answer is like, it does take time. That segment is a piece of the process,
right?
Like you thinking it takes this much time, but actually it takes that much time. That is the process. Yep. Like my own example, not talking about anybody else, right? Remember those PDFs I showed you like way back?
Yep.
I just published another one today. Right. I had them pre-made or made when we were having that conversation a year and a half ago, whenever it was. And I just published one today. So, I mean, I've been doing it periodically.
Thanks, Brian. I feel a little bit better about my own inaction.
You know, like that's how much time it takes.
Yeah.
So stop beating yourself up. I think that's really, really important, you know?
And I think
if we're lucky and the lightning does strike, like go, run.
Right. And I think like everything comes in its own time in a way. Like you learn the rhythm of the music and you learn how to dance to it. And it's not a pure excuse. It's a little bit of an excuse, but on the same time, like it's actually just the best way. Like when you're finally comfortable getting it done, that might have been the best time versus like really like punishing yourself or, you know, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And again, like I think one thing, and here's another behind the grind as well, is I think I move a little bit too slow when that lightning strikes, or I move really quick, but then I'm not like, it's just too unplanned sometimes. And I think this is where you need to have like the toolkit or something a little bit solidified. So you've thought about like, well, if this does take off, I need to do whatever. Mm-hmm. If you haven't gone through that process, you'd be like, ooh, lightning.
But, you know, But, you know, it's also like, that's why it's so great to have a cast of characters around you so that, you know, when it is time, you can go through that list. Like, all right, either this person can play that role or this person can play that role. Like, you know, it's constant. And like, the only way to do that is to launch one project, you know, it probably not doing great, launching another one, feeling like, okay, I can use this character because last time it worked well. I can bring in this new character because I'm developing all these, whatever. I'm just thinking in terms of characters. You call it a toolkit. I call it this list, character list, and that's how I'm just thinking about teams in that way. Anyway, fantastic episode.
Yeah, great, man.
I think we've really pivoted this topic in a way that's a lot more universal than just like my own rebuild. Like, you know, watch it, please. I would appreciate that.
Link below and above. Yep.
Awesome. But like this is applicable to like everybody, but also specifically this entrepreneurial dilemma of like, should I launch another project? Should I do it now? Can I do it now? Is it like, do I have the resources to do it now? Is it the right time? Is the market going to respond? All these different like questions and challenges.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that topic, man. This is a really good conversation. At least I'm enjoying it. I hope you are too.
I am. Hell yeah. We're going to keep doing it every week, man. So
here we are.
I think we open up a lot of other conversations as well, like as always.
Yeah.